September was a huge reading month for me. I read 15 books. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. I had such a crazy reading month this month. I finished 15 books across romance, sci-fi, post-apocalyptic, fantasy, and even a Western classic. Some were 5-star ratings and some not so much. So let's get right into it. I read 4 sci-fi books this month, so let's start off with those. I did not expect to love sci-fi so much, and I'm just breaking into the genre. I finally read Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This is a dystopian sci-fi set on Mars. We're following Darrow, who starts off in the bottom, the lowest part of society you can possibly be in, and he infiltrates his way up into the golds, which is the highest. I've heard this compared to the Hunger Games, and I don't really see it. I don't. The more I think about it, I get that like the dystopian political aspects could kind of maybe correlate in some ways, but this, in my opinion, is so much better. Way bloodier, way more political. Stakes are so much higher. It's intense, it's fast-paced, and it's actually a little bit dark. Darker than I was expecting. And book one is very different than the next 2 books in that first trilogy. This one, you do have more of like a games aspect, but I don't know if I would necessarily compare it to that. I think it's more Lord of the Flies. You have a bunch of kids thrown together in this setting. It's like a military college setting, except the teachers are observing and the kids are doing their thing. And you really get to see who people are when you're put in these really horrible situations. I absolutely adore this series. It's also very addictive. So addictive that I couldn't put it down and I had to pick up the next 2 books. I completely binged Golden Sun and Morning Star right afterwards. Book 2 is Golden Sun, and this is my favorite book of the trilogy. The stakes in this one are even higher. There's betrayals, so many more politics. We really dive deep into the politics here, and you have epic space battles. Space battles are a thing I never knew I needed in my life, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Space battles are actually more terrifying to me than any type of regular battle because once a ship is gone, like you're sucked out into space. It's creepy. This book will give you whiplash, but in the best way. You will never know who to trust here. If you think you trust them, think again. It also absolutely broke me. The amount of tears I cried in this book. I have a whole reading vlog up. I have no words. I can't say any more without spoiling it. This is absolutely my favorite so far in this series. And the way that Golden Sun ended, I don't know who you are if you can read Golden Sun and not jump directly into Morning Star. Jaw dropped on the floor, didn't expect what was happening to happen. I felt crushed. I felt betrayed. I felt devastated. Like I physically felt ill in my real life and I felt depressed. I was not in a good way. I had to jump directly into Morningstar to see what was going on. This is the finale of the first trilogy. And while yes, it is extremely emotional and very epic all in itself, I think I was completely traumatized from Golden Sun. That this book didn't hit me as hard solely because I didn't even have time to process my trauma that I just went through. And I jumped right into this. So whatever happened in Golden Sun was worse to me than this because how? How could that just happen? Who writes that? I do have to say that while this one emotionally devastates you as well, you get such satisfying payoff in this one because it is the end of the first trilogy. So you're gonna get the payoff you've been working for the first 3 books that you just read. And I know a lot of people don't like Darrow for some reason, but I like him. I think it's difficult to do what he did, to go undercover and pretend to be someone that you're not, but also like when you're at the top of the food chain and you're in the highest you can be in society, it also allows those dark parts of you to come out. So like that's just human nature, is what it is. And I am taking quite the break in between this trilogy and the next set of books in the series because I need to be emotionally ready for that. That was too much. I need a break. I would say my favorite part of that entire series is the friendships that they built. The friendships, the loyalty, the very raw human nature that was written into those books, and the space battles. I love the space battles. The last science fiction book I read was This Is How You Lose the Time War. It is one of the shortest books I have ever read and also that I have in my library. This is completely different from action-packed Red Rising. It's poetic, the way that it's written. If you don't have a poetry type of brain, I think this writing may be a little bit difficult for you because this was difficult for me. My brain does not do well with that type of writing. I listened to it instead, and it was absolutely phenomenal. I actually thought I wasn't going to be able to finish this at first, solely because I couldn't read the book. And I've never had that happen to me before. But I listened to it, and it was easily one of the best books I've ever read. One of the most beautifully written books I've ever read. This is about two rival agents that fall in love across time. They're literally fighting each other throughout space and time. They're the best agents on each of their sides, and they write these letters to each other. And at first, those letters are bragging, kind of making fun of the other one. Haha, I outsmarted you, but it's written way better than what I just said. And then eventually these letters turn into a friendship, and then it turns into more. And it is, I don't even know how else to say it besides that it is a beautiful book. I go way more in depth in my reading vlog, so go check that out if you want to see it. Highly, highly recommend this book. Easy 5 stars. Easy. So between the Red Rising trilogy and the Time War, I spent a good chunk of my month in space. I don't know, would you call those space operas? I'm not really sure on that terminology and what that means. All I know is I spent a lot of time in space and I loved it. I have had the Sacred Stones trilogy on my bookshelves for so long. This is the Probably Smut edition. And I would be lying if I said I loved this. I don't think this is bad. I think this is a book I should have read at the beginning of my fantasy journey, and I would have absolutely adored it. This book is perfect for someone that wants to get into fantasy, but doesn't need like heavy world building. It's a very easy to understand classic darker fantasy. Or should I say fantasy romance? Romantasy? I don't know. Whatever the terminology is, it has romance in it. It is not an epic fantasy, so I guess whatever you want to consider it. There's a kidnapped heroine, mysterious captor, tons of magic and tension. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that one. It's not one that was very memorable to me. It's not very original. I don't know if I'll continue the series. I do have the other 2 books, so maybe eventually, but probably more as like a palate cleanser if I need something simple to kind of just read along the way. Then I read Anji Kills a King by Evan Leikam. This is his debut novel. This one had such a cool premise. You have this girl, Anji. She randomly decides to kill a king, and then she's out. She books it. She's running for it. It turns out the menagerie, which is this group of elite soldiers of the kingdom, is hunting her down, and the hawk finds her first. Her and the hawk go on this adventure that's filled with revenge and really morally gray characters. This is another book I think I just read at the wrong point of my life that I'm in. I think if I was younger, I would have enjoyed this book. It's a lot of traveling, but not like exciting traveling. Like we go here, we take care of a horse, we sleep. Something happens, we go there, we take care of the horse again, we sleep, something happens. But like nothing that wanted to make me keep picking up this book. It was like a struggle for me to get through. I think this is another book that's really good for beginning epic fantasy versus the other one was more of like a romance fantasy. This is good for epic fantasy beginners that aren't ready for crazy world building. There was like no world building in this book. It just kind of, literally the back of the book says Anji was doing laundry for a king she hates. When the opportunity presented itself, she cut his throat and runs for her life. That's literally where you go the second you start reading the book. You're there. You don't know much about the kingdom. Magic isn't really explained. It's in this book, but you don't know nothing really about it. So definitely for someone who has not yet read epic fantasy that doesn't need a crazy fleshed out world or a fleshed out magic system. How could it be a reading wrap up without me talking about one of my favorite series at the moment? This series was the binge series of my month. This is book 4 of He Who Fights with Monsters, but I am currently, today's the last day of September as I'm filming this, and I am literally about to finish book 7. So I read 4, 5, 6, and 7 this month, and I couldn't put it down. This is technically a lit RPG, but I believe it falls more into the fantasy category as well. That's why I'm just going to leave it in the fantasy category. It has humor, found family, Jason Asano, who's this sarcastic, good-natured, kind of annoying at times, but you love him anyways type of guy. I will say book 4, 5, and 6 were not my favorite of the series. They were still good. I still enjoyed them. But those were Jason's like Earth arc. And if I want Earth politics, I'll just watch the news. I don't need Earth politics, especially in my fantasy books. So they were good, didn't love them, but I still enjoyed my time reading them or actually listened to them. I love the audiobook for these books. Book 7, however, book 7, we're back, baby. We are back in our fantasy world. I can't remember what it's called at this point, and things are just moving at the speed of light. We're fighting the monsters. We're seeing some bigger, I didn't think we could get bigger or better, but I guess we could because there's some crazy things going on in book 7 and I'm eating it up. I literally have book 8 and 9 ready to go on my audio. And now that we're no longer on Earth, I'm loving the politics again. I love some good fantasy politics. It's kind of hard to say anything else about that series because we're like deep in. I think there's 12 books total and I'm on book 7. So there's really not much more I can say without giving you the nitty-gritty details. So as you could see, fantasy was a big theme this month, as it is every month. It definitely like scratched my fantasy itch. It's crazy to say that this month I only read one contemporary romance, and that was If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia. This is one of my favorite books of the year. If you read one fall book, make it this one. It was also the perfect palate cleanser between all of these heavy sci-fi fantasy books. This is a book about self-discovery, community, love, friendships, learning to love yourself, as well as there was a romantic love aspect in this book. Very sweet, very uplifting, very cozy. The time frame in this book spanned from like fall up until New Year's. So truly you could read this anytime throughout the Burr months if you're a reader that likes to mood read seasonal reads. Slow burn, not spicy whatsoever. Absolutely loved it. We're following our FMC, and when her mother passes, she goes back to this small, cozy little town to take care of her mother's bed and breakfast, while her sister is off at college finishing her degree and taking care of their dad. Her next door neighbor is Cliff, the most perfect single dad, and he's a baker. I don't know why that makes it better, but it does. Who doesn't like baked goods? And I will say, she is not very good with people. I think that's why I love this FMC so much, is she's just She's someone that doesn't do people very well, which gives us some very, very entertaining situations. And I picked up this 900-page chonker. This was my out of my comfort zone read of the month. It is a Western classic that I saw a random review on that made me just have to go and pick it up. And honestly, it surprised me. Am I a Western girl? I wouldn't say that, but did I enjoy this book? Actually, I did. The more I've been sitting with it, the more I'm appreciating what I read. I thought this book was about these guys going on their one last cattle run from Texas to Montana. Thought it was mainly about the cattle run, the dangers of it, maybe some Indians, and dealing with going into this new territory and exploring. What we get is so much more. This is a book about life. At the end of the day, it's not happy, it's not sad. Life just keeps going on. No matter what happens, you just keep going. I have a solo reading vlog just on this book. So check that out if you want to see my in-depth thoughts and feelings on this. But I would say very well done. This book was written before I was born in 1985, I think it was. And it is still a good book. Good books will stand the test of time. That is such a true saying. I will say they do have a series on Amazon Prime. That is funny because it was made the year I was born in 1989. And it's actually pretty good for when it was filmed. I am enjoying the series. I think I can appreciate the series because I've read the book. It moves a lot faster. But if I was just watching the series and not reading the book, I would not have an appreciation for the characters like I do since I've read the book. That was the last book I read physically. Everything else I read on my Kindle. I don't talk about it too much because I don't read as many anymore. But when I first started, when I was younger, I read tons of fantasy, and then I went through this period of time where I read all post-apocalyptic stuff. I loved the prepping idea. I loved being prepared for these natural disasters, and I went through an obsession both in like TV series and books. And it's been quite some time since I've read that type of post-apocalyptic book. I picked up 1 Second After. It was a book I read something on Instagram about that was just completely random. I don't even know. It wasn't even like a reading post about books. It was kind of in the description that, hey, read this book because they were talking about post-apocalyptic situations. So, of course, I downloaded it on Kindle Unlimited. It is a post-apocalyptic survival novel about an EMP that goes off, and it's set in this small town. An EMP is an electromagnetic pulse, and it knocks out basically anything electrical, cars, electronics in your house. I think in order to protect something from an EMP, you have to have it in like a special type of box or container, or it be like one of the old school cars or the old school electronics that aren't using the little computer chips to work, essentially. This is one of the most realistic post-apocalyptic books I've ever read. Our main character is someone who was up for a 1-star promotion to be a general, 1-star general, and his wife got cancer, so he actually doesn't get that promotion. He moves home with his wife to a small little town where he becomes a professor at like, I don't know if it was a military college, but a lot of former military work there as professors. So he's not somebody that ever had combat experience. He did more of the analytical, leading behind the scenes type of thing. Most post-apocalyptic books that I read, you have like this crazy, experienced special teams type of person that was in the military that's able to react in these type of situations and come out on top because that's what they're trained to do. He was not trained in that way. He struggles. And it is very realistic. While he does have like the minimal amount of training, his training or his expertise starts coming in when he's having to like plan things, analyze what's going on around them. But I will say it doesn't happen right away in that book, and there's a lot of really crazy, grimy things that happen. Not perfect, but I very much enjoyed the realistic aspect of it and how I think about it after the fact of reading it, and how it like makes you think about how fragile society really is, that when you lose these things that you depend on and you don't even realize what you're depending on every day, like when that's gone, how hard life actually is and how unprepared we all are in those type of situations. So now that I've just like rambled on for 10 minutes about that, but sorry, I could like really dive deep into this stuff. I find it so interesting. We're just gonna move on. I then read a thriller, a mafia thriller mystery, which is another type of out of my comfort zone type of read. I love mafia books, and normally I read dark romance mafia books. This was my first mafia type of mafia book. I read Sins of the Father and Blood of the Sons? Blood of the Sons. And I thought this was a duology. There's actually, I believe, a third book being worked on. And I found this very intriguing. We're following like this multi-generational family that's kind of mixed with drama and crime and a little bit of like some stuff going on in a court. There's lots of twists. We're seeing the mafia being run from the perspective of this family that came from Italy that had some bad stuff go down in Italy, so they left. They came to New York, trying to get their family out of that business, that situation, only to find out that a lot of the same people came over to New York. And now you're having branches of families turn up over here, and the sons are getting pulled in. I don't want to say too much because this was really, it did have the thriller aspect of feeling anxious and not knowing what's going on and these plot twists just coming out of nowhere with very frustrating endings because they didn't end in a way where I was like, I need to pick up the next book right now. But they ended in a way like, you know, when someone stops talking mid-sentence and you're kind of waiting for them to continue their sentence, but they're done. That's how those books end. So it was a little frustrating, but a series I will definitely continue because I found it very intriguing. And I would actually like to read more serious mafia books that aren't of the dark romance style, even though I do love those too. I think it's very interesting to see these perspectives from, I guess, like family political type of view. So that was the 15 books I read in September. Everything from space, science fiction to westerns to mafia thrillers. I don't know if I can pick a favorite. They're all so different. I would say Red Rising trilogy as a whole's up there. This Is How You Lose the Time War. If it makes you happy. Book 7 of He Who Fights with Monsters. There were so many good ones. Let me know in the comments what your favorite read of September was and which book you cannot wait to read in October. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and going through all of these amazing reads. If you're new, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. I hope y'all have an amazing day, and I will see you in the next one.